vaccine would expose your body to a version of the virus that is too weak to cause infection, but just strong enough to stimulate an immune response. Within a few weeks, cells in your immune system would make markers called antibodies, which would be specific for only the coronavirus, or specifically its spike protein. Antibodies then attach to the virus and prevent it from attaching to your cells. Your immune system then responds to signals from the antibodies by consuming and destroying the clumps of viruses. If you then catch the real virus at a later stage, your body would recognize it and destroy it. In other words, your immune system is now primed. Collecting evidence on whether this will be possible, safe, and effective is part of what's taking researchers so long to develop a vaccine. It's a race against time to develop a vaccine amid a pandemic. Each step in vaccine development usually takes months, if not years. An Ebola vaccine broke records by being ready in 5 years. The hope here is to develop one for the new coronavirus in a record-breaking 12 to 18 months. While all this will take time, stay home if you can, to protect the most vulnerable. And don't forget to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds and as often as possible. Now, what would happen if you didn't do that for an entire year? Well, that's a story for another What If. You know, it's important to remember that people like me aren't medical experts in the field of virology, and the information that we hear on a daily basis is still changing regularly. We'll be checking in with actual scientists to get a better understanding of exactly what we're facing with COVID-19 and what effects the virus will have on us long term. Now, some of you watching right now may have had some first-hand experience with the virus. Aaliyah Jasmine, our environmental host, has as well, and our sympathies are with her as they are with you. I dare say, though, I am still jealous of her assignment and who she got to interview.
Hey everyone, bonjour. I'm Aaliyah Jasmine. I'm a television host and producer and an environmental journalist, and I am thrilled to be part of Live MedAid today and support Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, in their efforts on the front line to battle the COVID-19 pandemic. I lost my aunt to this virus last week, so it's deeply personal to me. Now, I've traveled all over the world covering social justice and environmental issues. Many of you may have seen my work on MTV News or Discovery Channel in Canada or on NBC4 News here in Los Angeles. And you might be asking, what does the environment have to do with this pandemic? Well, I am going to get to the heart of that with legends like Dr. David Suzuki, Dr. Wade Davis, and I am talking to a photojournalist who has gone undercover in the wet markets in China. So merci, thank you so much for supporting and watching Live MedAid, and I will see you later in the show.
If you have Netflix, chances are you've watched the show Pandemic during this pandemic. It's a docuseries that introduces you to the frontline workers in the fight against emerging viruses. Now, don't watch it yet. You can tune in after Live MedAid is over, please. Well, later in the show, we're proud to bring you a chat we had with Sarah Ives. She features prominently in the docuseries, and she's the lead scientist working on the Centavax vaccine, which, if you don't know, is a universal vaccine designed to tackle all strains of influenza. Will she be the one who invents something to release us all from quarantine?
If you're watching this video around the time it comes out, and maybe for months after as well, then chances are you're currently stuck in your home, quarantined. You've also probably heard that word more in the last few months than you have in your entire life put together. But what does quarantine actually mean, and where does the word really come from? Let's take a break from epidemiology to instead study the etymology of this extremely popular global buzzword, and to get to the root cause of the word quarantine. If you're going by the Merriam-Webster dictionary definition of the word, the two you're probably most familiar with are a restraint upon the activities or communications of a person or the transport of goods designed to prevent the spread of disease or pests, and a state of enforced isolation. But these are actually only the third and fourth definitions of the word. The first and second are a period of 40 days and a term during which a ship arriving in port and suspected of carrying contagious disease is held in isolation from the shore. Probably not what you're expecting, right? Well, let's turn back time and explore these more esoteric definitions. Like a lot of English words, quarantine was largely plagiarized from Western Europe, It's derived from the Latin word quadraginta and the Italian word quaranta, both of which mean 40. The actual act the word quarantine refers to has been in use since long before the word ever came into prominence. Even the Bible has references to the isolation of lepers in order to prevent the spread of leprosy. Prior to the 14th century, when the term was coined, many cultures even had designating areas for sequestering the sick. In Venice, these were called lazarettos, named after Lazarus, the man Jesus was said to have brought back from the dead, and also the Catholic patron saint of lepers. And they were built outside of the city to keep the sick separate from the general population. However, it was during history's deadliest pandemic, the Black Death, which killed around 200 million victims, that quarantine as a term came into use. The Venetian-controlled port city of Ragusa, which is now Dubrovnik in modern Croatia, implemented a plague time policy known as Trentino. Under Trentino, trade ships arriving from plague-infested areas were to be isolated for a period of 30 days to see if the crew presented plague symptoms before letting them mix with the general population. Criminals who broke the law also faced 30 days in isolation under Trentino. This policy turned out to be quite successful, and over the next 80 years was also adopted by Pisa, Marseille, and a number of other cities. During the next century of development, the period of isolation was moved from 30 to 40 days, meaning the name changed from Trentino to Quarantino, which was then anglicized to quarantine. There's a lot of speculation as to why they changed the number of days from 30 to 40, and some suggest it could be an extra safety precaution. Others posit it might be because of the religious significance of the number 40, like Christ's biblical 40 days fasting in the desert. But like many aspects of history, it's equally likely the change was purely arbitrary. The enforcement of the quarantino was often fickle and inconsistent, and often made exceptions for the rich and influential, who could simply buy themselves out of isolation when the poor bore the brunt of the law. And that may have been several hundred years ago, but really, some things never change.
I think I like the name Quarantino better. For those of you wondering, we are not under quarantine here where I am, but we are social distancing. We've got a small crew of people in the building producing the show for us, and we're keeping a 6-foot radius from each other, or as I like to say, a 1.8 meter radius. We're based in Toronto, Canada. The actual easiest way to explain social distancing to Canadians was to say, keep one hockey stick away from each other. Everyone can picture that instantly. No further questions. The next host I want to introduce you to is a very interesting guy. He's based out of the UK, where social distancing would be 3 tea trolleys away from each other. He's a scientist, an educator, an environmentalist, and a musician. He's going to be joining us in the next hour, and he's very happy about it.
Hi, I'm Matthew Sherman. I am a science presenter and an environmentalist and co-founder of Aim High, and I am here in the
Hospitals are at their absolute limit.
The entire world is under siege.
Lend your voice to this rendition of Rihanna's Found Love in a Hopeless Place, which, you know, obviously applies here. There's a lot of things about this last 6 to 8 weeks that we've talked about and we will talk about today on the show. But one of the things that sort of sticks with me and a lot of people is that we're all in this together. This particular version and this particular song will be able to sort of tie it all together at the end in that way. So we're excited about that. Like I said, we're excited about a lot of things, but that's one of the things that I think is truly unique.
Yeah, we are all in this together. This show here was 6 weeks in the making, believe it or not, and a lot of people worked on that too. Over 100 volunteers on this show, and we want to thank them all. But who I want to introduce you to right now is the brains behind it, the event organizer, Steve Halford.
We welcome back to the show Dr. James Miscolic. Dr. Miscolic, obviously there's been a lot of talk about mental health issues in the general population, but specifically to frontline workers. I can only imagine that ER, where you are the sort of tip of the spear for a lot of the cases that do come in, unprecedented times for you and your colleagues. Talk about how that's affecting you and others, and what you are concerned about going forward.
Yeah, it certainly is more difficult to metabolize at the time any difficult emotions that are coming up, because you're just distanced from each other. You're separated by these masks and plastic and coverings from not just your patients, with whom an authentic exchange can be the completion of your duty and makes you feel renewed, but also from your colleagues whose faces you relied on to comfort you and to know, the depths of what you're struggling with. And now that's very private, more private than ever before. So, things like you're doing here with this show, or we're doing with this show, help, because it really matters to know that people are here with us, that we walk into, what is at times a dangerous situation, but really by the solidarity of the public, we feel that we're not alone. You hear people banging pots and pans. You hear people, who, a month ago wouldn't have thought twice about the job of someone who had to clean the rooms of an infected patient. And now those people are starting to feel a renewed sense of enthusiasm. So it does mitigate some of the worst of it. And I think this opportunity to share more our challenges with people all over the world is a great antidote to the fear and isolation that a lot of us are feeling. And I hope it's something that will continue to grow and outlive COVID.
And I'll just ask you as well, PTSD, it's an acronym many people are familiar with. Really over the last, let's say 10 years, we understand that, trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder can be a result of a lot of things, and it stays with you and you have to be able to get treatment. This is a very exceptional circumstance for ER doctors. Are we institutionally set up, and how do we deal with the potential PTSD after COVID-19?
I'll just tell you, I think I know some of what you're talking about from personal experience and having worked with MSF and dealing with these things that are difficult to share. And it's almost the inability to share it leads to its lack of integration. So let's give you an example of what we're doing, in the ER. So as an opportunity to deal with something as it comes up, such that it doesn't come up in great strength, in the future. So if it used to be the case, if someone died in our ER, we would all just go our separate ways, had a traumatic or cardiac arrest. Now, more often, some of us are saying, hey, we're going to do a pause. If you want to stay, please do. If you want to step out, please step out. Most people stay. And then around this bed, we will say, we'd like to recognize this person had a life and a family and dreams. And we'd like to recognize the people in the room who tried to help them, though they knew none of those things. And then you just wait 20 seconds, which is an eternity. But into that space comes
fire. Journalist Sherman brings us this story. Check it out.
Yung mga nasunugan dyan sa Delpan, ngayon lang, quick response lang tayo. Lalo na ngayon may COVID. Survival na yan sila. Wala nang bahay, wala nang matirahan, lahat ng pagkain. At least makabigay tayo ng pansit ngayon, yun ang patuloy nating tutugunan sa ating makakaya. Siyempre, sa tulong ng Panginoon.
I'm Father Jose. I'm a Redemptorist, missionary priest assigned here in Baclaran National Shrine. Right now, we are in partnership with the Art Mobile Relief Kitchen Group.
We're actually cooking dinner for our frontliners and all the homeless outside. Basically, all those in need in this crisis. It's a war out there with them, with an unknown enemy, with the virus. So the least we can do is cook meals for them.
After the national government, be afraid, be afraid.
Our next guests are rising young stars, Cambodian-American singer-songwriter Satika, and from Manila, neo-soul R&B artist Kiana Valenciano, whose father, Gary V, was apparently the Michael Jackson of the Philippines. Check it out.
Hospitals are at their absolute limit.
The entire world is under siege.
The death toll has now risen to more than 51,000.
We welcome back to the show Dr. James Moskalik. Dr. Moskalik, obviously there's been a lot of talk about mental health issues.
COVID-19, the coronavirus, respects.
Wait on a vaccine.
Going forward, Scott.
The design studio.
Side by side with our
are so regulated because they really can be the difference between life and death. Getting them wrong can prove fatal. Any new vaccine must pass countless tests before it's rolled out for public use, which is part of the reason why they can take so long to be developed. It is still true though that vaccination isn't advised for some people, and that's why herd immunity is so important. The idea being that with wide enough vaccine coverage, those most at risk who can't be immunized are still protected. While the heavy regulation of vaccines is undoubtedly a good thing and necessary for safety, however, the inevitable delays can be the exact opposite of what you want in a crisis. Under usual circumstances, it can take as long as 15 to 20 years to develop and implement a vaccine, because of all the clinical trials that it has to pass. In the case of a global pandemic that could quickly claim millions of lives then, this is a major problem. On the one hand, we need a vaccine quickly. On the other, it's impossible to cut corners. In the case of the COVID-19 outbreak, we don't have a single vaccine to work from. The previous two major coronavirus outbreaks, SARS and MERS, were contained quite quickly, so while work did begin on vaccines, it was eventually stopped. Nevertheless, the work that was done in the fight against SARS is helping scientists that are working on a solution now. Yes, they're having to start from the beginning, but we have at least seen viruses of this type before. Still, there doesn't appear to be a quick fix here, and as of early 2020, it's estimated that it will take between 12 and 18 months to get a safe, tested vaccine into the global market. If a COVID-19 vaccine were made that quickly, then it'd represent an unprecedented achievement in medicine. And once the vaccine is launched, there's another, perhaps even greater obstacle to overcome: distribution. Only time will tell what the price tag on a coronavirus shot will be, or how quickly such an important medical breakthrough will reach everywhere on Earth. But it's only then, when the majority of the global population becomes immune to the virus, that we can truly say we've beaten it. Depending on factors like research and manufacturing cost, the logistics of mass distribution, and just the plain difficulty of learning how to immunize against a new pathogen in the first place, a vaccine can take anywhere from months to decades just to be developed. For COVID-19, it's still far too early to say with any certainty, but even the most hopeful of scientific predictions concede that we're unlikely to have a vaccine against it for at least the first year of the outbreak. Until then, our best way forward is to try to slow the spread and stay safe.
It's no secret. While we wait on a vaccine, we need to stop the spread. Social distance, wash your hands. These are the things that are expected of you to keep you, your fellow citizens, and your family members from getting sick and possibly dying of this disease. Later in our show, our environmental host, Aaliyah Jasmine, will check in with David Suzuki, a veritable institution in science broadcasting. For over 40 years now, he's hosted the show The Nature of Things on CBC. He was also the host of The Secret Life on BBC and PBS. He's a geneticist and a longtime activist in the fight to reverse climate change. You'll want to stick around for that. But the next host I want to introduce you to, very funny comedian and actor. You may know him from the ABC drama Detroit 187 or his HBO documentary Every Word is Absolutely True. Here in Canada, he's most famous for his multiple roles on This Hour Has 22 Minutes. The very funny Shaun Majumder.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Shaun Majumder, and I'm one of the hosts of this amazing event, Live MedAid, in support of Doctors Without Borders, who are out there side by side with our frontline workers all around the world who are doing an amazing job. Thank you to everybody. And this is an amazing event, and I'm so honored to be a part of this. And you know, as an actor and sometimes comedian, working in TV, I've had the opportunity to interview some pretty incredible people. And today's event, I get to interview two real life heroes, incredible ER doctors, one from Toronto, one from New York City, and their stories are so incredible, and each of them has used social media to share what it's like on the front lines. And if you haven't seen their stories, you will hear about them now, and you will make sure that you go and follow them on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And you're going to love it. So stick around for that a little bit later. It's an incredible, insightful, it's heartfelt, it's emotional, it's funny. It's a great interview. And thank you again for supporting this amazing event, Live MedAid, in support of Doctors Without Borders. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you later in the show.
Another guest we're excited about later in the show is Wade Davis. Wade is an anthropologist and a photographer. He's also a National Geographic Society Explorer in Residence. That's pretty cool. Wade's been called a real-life Indiana Jones. He's given several TED Talks about human culture around the world, and he joins us to educate us about how our current civilization is using the planet, how indigenous civilizations may have used it, and how we can improve the way we integrate as humans with the Earth. You know, as we learn how to deal with this new normal, a design team came up with a project to help us all nudge each other in the right direction. Our friends at Dipley sent us this story about making social distancing not so intimidating.
Social distancing goes against basic human instincts. My name is Sille Krokow. I'm a Danish nudge and behavioral design expert. When it comes to guiding to social distancing, it's very important that we do it sort of in a positive manner. We see a lot of supermarkets coming up with their own signs in various colors with written information, and just like really communicating in ways that does not resonate well with behavior change. If we start using alarming colors like yellow and red and stuff like that, we intuitively give people an impression of that this is a dangerous situation, which can lead to panic, which can lead to a behavior like hoarding and stuff like that, that we really don't want to see happening during this corona outbreak.
To stop the coronavirus from spreading, we've developed a concept called the art of social distancing. It's basically templates or footprints that allow you to use your creativity to nudge others into keeping social distance.
There can be cultural adjustments, which is also why we have engaged with artists from different countries.
My name is Nana, and I am the co-founder of the design studio Vas and Hannibal, which is based in Copenhagen. I think that an artistic approach is just very nice. I mean, it just gives you a feeling that there's another person behind the message. You know, idea that you step in something and you drag it along with you. These footsteps that look like they've just stepped in some wet paint symbolizes how you have an impact on other people and